Hello, I would like to talk about the bolter and what the actual best way to build the bolter is. So, Cavalcade and Pinning Fire deals about 23-ish thousand damage per magazine, and it takes about 3 full magazines to kill bosses, which honestly isn't very good. Where this setup shines, and don't worry, this is even worse than it looks, because when you start considering puncture and distances and actually fighting bosses, this setup gets worse for this, so don't worry, I'll talk about that. So, what this setup has that's nice is after you get some Pinning Fire built up, you consistently one-shot yellow gunners. So this means it also is really, really, really nice for just mag dumping into like 4 maulers or a big crowd of ragers. So you can easily 2-tap ragers like this once you start building things up. So that's what that setup would be okay for. The next most common thing that I see is Shattering, Impact, and Puncture. Well, I've got beef with this setup, and I think this is the worst setup overall. And let me explain why. So, this is so fucking frustrating. This right here, that these guys have like 60 health left. And then, hold on, to make this extra frustrating, well, that was a crit, so. Look at this. Shotgunners are also left with like a sneeze amount of HP with this setup. But this is easily the best setup for bossing. And I'll explain something about this setup. So as you can see, especially if you let the bleed tick down, this does like 3,000 plus extra damage compared to the other setup. And even if you don't let the bleeds tick down all the way, and I missed like 3 shots here just by the way. Yeah, I missed a ton of shots there. And it still took less ammo. So it takes, like, honestly, 2 and, like, 20% magazines to kill a boss like that. And the bonus to this setup is if you're fighting from far back like this, the bleed actually adds a pretty substantial amount of damage while you're doing other things, which is nice. So this is significantly worse at killing elites, like way worse. If you don't get something like boosts in damage from your teammates or, like, marksmen or something, which don't have very high uptimes in their own right, then this setup can't ever really one-shot these guys like without a crit, which is a massive problem. So what I think the best setup is Pinning Fire and Puncture together. So why do I think this? 1, 2, 3. After getting 3 stacks of Pinning Fire built up, you still get the one-shot. And with 2 stacks of it built up, you can still, like, pretty consistently kill. The bleed tick will finish them off. Hell, I mean, even with just 1 stack, you get really, really, really close. And it'll even push you over sometimes. Yeah, see, so if you get literally anything, even, like, the fire team bonus, when I say anything, I mean literally a 0.5% damage increase, and then just 1 stack is enough to take them out. And if we look at bosses, the up-close damage is honestly not that bad. In fact, it's honestly on par with the Rending Blessing. And this at the same time, actually, it's like the exact same with this. It's a little varied because of bleed stacks. Yeah, it's virtually the exact same boss killing as opposed to Shattering Impact. So you maintain your 1-taps on, like, everything. Also, another thing that's nice, if you build up a few stacks of Pinning Fire, you maintain the 1-shot body shot on gunners, or I'm sorry, shotgunners. After, like, 1 or 2 stacks, you maintain the 1-shot headshot on these guys. And you get virtually the exact same boss DPS, no matter what, even if it's close or far range, on bosses. The only thing that this setup suffers against, that this setup doesn't, or fuck, that this setup doesn't is crushers. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys, the bolter fucking sucks at dealing with crushers. Please, for the love of God, do not dump your bolter into crushers. Even if you get a lot of crit headshots, you're still looking at half of your magazine going into this. And if you use this setup and drop flak for Carapace, so this is Shattering Impact plus the bleed plus Carapace, you're still looking at like 40% of your magazine per crusher. So even with a setup like this that is virtually worthless against bosses, and yeah, see, if you're not getting headshots, this setup is really bad. So even if you give up your one-shot breakpoints versus all the gunners in the game, just to be able to be better at dealing with crushers, you're still wasting 80% of a magazine just to knock down like 2 of them. So you're wasting like a magazine and a half to kill 1 pack of crushers. Then you consider that like the dueling sword exists and you can just like, you know, you can just do that stuff. You know, in a game you'll have your crits going, so you get crits and you consistently 2-shot. Because I've had some people tell me, or at least I've seen some people say, that the dueling sword and the bolter don't pair together, which I think is an insane take. And yeah, you can see I was playing with Pinning Fire and Cavalcade there, and I'm pretty dead set on this being the best setup. Pinning Fire, Puncture, Flak, Unyielding. Because, like, the primary reason you pick the bolter is to just absolutely melt bosses. Especially now with the new modifier and Beast of Nurgle's running around like crazy. I don't think there's any reason to take Maniac. I don't think there's any reason to take Carapace. And I don't see any reason to take Critical Hit Strike. Yeah, I mean, this pretty much is everything you could ever want to know about the bolter, if I'm being honest with you.